Yeah, so what we're going to do for exercise 217 is we're going to start with the skyscraper that you made in exercise 214. If you got a little adventurous on how much it intersects with itself or whatever, you may want to create a new simplified version of it. The truth is that for this operation to work, we need to have ruled surfaces, so we can't have bulging in two directions or two-dimensional curvature. So i.e. like a sphere or that kind of a bulge where we have curves in both directions. The skyscraper that I did, if you guys remember back to that, does have plenty of curvature to it, but it's curvature always in just one direction. So there's always a straight line that goes across. If you have trouble with the unrolled surface, you can go back through and re-loft the surface together by creating some side curves, and each loft will therefore unroll because it's a straight line. That's the nature of a lofted surface. So the purpose today is to learn to make a physical model, something like this, that you could go laser cut, of something complicated like that. And Rhino has some built-in tools that allow us to do this relatively easily, and I want you to have the experience of getting ready to build it. I used to make everybody actually make these models of their buildings and whatever, and I've found that with dealing with the topography and whatever, we will instead have you do the files but not actually cut them out and glue them together. So as part of your assignment 203, not only do you have 3 renderings, but you have an unrolled surface that could be cut out and glued together. So you have to do it, but you don't actually have to make the real model. So today is all about doing that, and then you'll have a lot of extra time today to work on your assignment 203. Remember, the building size is different. You have to get it into the San Francisco skyline. You have to be able to create 3 different views of renderings with it, and you'll post all those views plus the unrolled file as part of your assignment 203. So, which is due Monday. Okay. So there's a reason that I'm giving you extra time on this. And so use your time wisely today, even though the actual unrolling won't take that long for you to do. So I went ahead and I pulled up the model that I had from last class, or excuse me, from 3 classes ago. And really all I'm concerned with right now is the skin of the building. So I'm going to go ahead and turn everything else off except for the skin of the building. And actually these tubes should be turned off as well. They were not on the correct layer. Let me change their layer. Change object layer. There we go. Okay, so when I look at this, I want to take kind of a fine look at this and make sure that all of my surfaces are in fact ruled surfaces. So even though they have some curvature to them, they're always connected by straight lines, which is what I want. That's good. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to join all of these surfaces together. So let's work my way around. I'll start here, and I'm going to take that and this and this and that. This surface, the top and the bottom. And I'm going to join all of those together. And hopefully it will create a polysurface, which in this case it did. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes you have trouble. You don't always have to do it, but it's helpful if you do it. So now that it's a joined polysurface, again, I'm working just with the skin of the building. I'm going to use a command called Unroll Surfaces to unroll these surfaces. If I type it in, it's unroll srf for unroll surface. If not, it's under surface, I think. It's been a while since I've done it. Where is it?
Unroll develop surface right down.
Why don't I see it? There it is. Unroll developable surface. So developable is another term for ruled, or a surface that can be unrolled in the first place. If you try to do this and it says, sorry, can't unroll, not a developable surface, you have two-dimensional curvature or curvature in both directions. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and pick the unroll developable surface option. Select surface or polysurface to unroll. That is my surface. Now notice that I have some options. I have explode, yes or no. I have labels, yes or no, and I have keep properties, yes or no. Couple things that are important. Explode, in all likelihood, is going to have to be set to yes, because, and then we'll reassemble it later, because if we don't explode it, we'll end up with parts that intersect or lay on top of other parts. Labels, we want to set to yes so that we can actually see how the various pieces come together. In the old days, it didn't label by default, and you had to go back through and realize which pieces connected to which pieces, which is very hard. With labels, it makes life very, very easy. And then keep properties we'll set to no. That's fine. And I'll go ahead and hit enter. And when I do that, it will take my building, it will divide it up, and we can see that there's a bunch of little labels that have been put together. And if I look in the top view, here are all of the unrolled surfaces that make up my building. And so I will start working with these, and a lot of times you just have to kind of drag them out so you can start to see how they're going to come together with a little bit more space around them. Okay, so now what we're going to ultimately be looking for is similar sides. So if we have, let's see here, 22 right there and 22 right there. So these two are going to go together. So I'll move this edge to there, and I'll rotate that edge to there. So 22 and 22 are now on top of each other. If we look here, this one's a little bit more complicated. I'm not sure how it decided. There's 31 and 31. Now, this is a little bit different because it's in the middle. So let me take this and rotate. And I know that because of how the building was built. So it's acceptable. See how 31, and we also have 16 and 9 listed on either side. So there's two more pieces there. Okay. Now we can start to look at, we have a top and we have a bottom. So depending on which way makes more logical sense, we can start to connect these other pieces. So let's look, there's 20 and there's 20. So let's move 20 to correspond right here. And we can rotate there to there. So this is kind of like unfolding like a cube, where you have to unfold the various pieces and connect them together. We also know that 21 would line up with 21. So I could take these two pieces, I could move them down to here, and I could rotate to there. This is actually the tower. So if I got lost, I could go back and reference that. So 17, we can match 17 up on this side right here, and then rotate. Of course, I do have snap on while I do this. There's 17. Notice that 18 corresponds down here. 3, let's see if we can find 3. There's 3. Let's take 3, and we'll rotate this like that. And so it's going to take a while of going through and figuring out where these various pieces go. 19 obviously connects to 19. 18 obviously connects to 18. If we come over here, there's probably one for 9. There's 9. Let's move 9 over. And let's rotate. Now this is okay, because if we were, oops, I didn't quite rotate it correctly. Hold on. If we look here, those two don't overlap, so the laser cutter would be able to cut those out okay. If they were to overlap, that wouldn't be good. 16 is probably the other one, so let's move 16 over. Like that. Right, so 1 and 5 are right there, so I put it on this side, and 5 is right here, but I'll use 7 and attach it right there. Now, obviously, I have had some practice in putting these things together, so I was guessing that that was the case. Now, we have 11, So we can go ahead and move 11. I could choose to use 11 or I could choose to use 10. Either side would work. Sometimes it's dependent on the laser cutter bed and whether you have space to include all of it or not. We'll go ahead and move these over a little bit more. All right, so it looks like I have 12 and 12, so we'll go ahead and move this one to right there. Okay, so there is my building splayed out. Okay, so it looks, yeah, like a squid or whatever. But if I were to go laser cut this, I'd be able to cut out the building and assemble it and glue it. Now, if I were actually gluing this, I need to take this a step further. So we'll do the cuts, and then I also need some little tabs that would help me glue it together. And there's an edge on this one example here. This was one I cut a couple years ago, where you can see there's a little tab piece that helps you glue it together. So we're going to go ahead and create the cut file for this. So let me go ahead and create a layer. We'll call that laser cut. And I'll create a sublayer for cut and a sublayer for engrave. Obviously, the cut layer will be set as red, and the engrave layer will be set as blue. Okay, and I'll start first with just the engrave layer as the active layer. And I'm going to use the duplicate border command. So I'll type dup border, or go to curve from objects, duplicate border. And that will allow me to create borders around some of these pieces. So I'll take these pieces here, and I'll hit enter, and it will then create a line that goes around these pieces. It may be helpful to do a few more, so let me dupe the border here of that piece, like that. And if I were to turn off the skin for a second, we'd start to see that I have the pieces kind of laid out. I might have to add a few more pieces. I might need a piece there. I could duplicate the borders here as well, or I could just go ahead and connect those pieces. So obviously these should be engraved lines because they're going to fold, but some of these lines here I want to use as an engraved line. Some of them I want to be a cut line. So it takes a little practice to see this, but let me take all of these and type explode so that they're not joined polylines. And now I want to start to create tabs for how these things glue together. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that at least one side has a tab. So if I was looking at this edge, it's going to connect to this edge. So either this side has to have a tab or this side has to have a tab. It doesn't matter which one. So let me go ahead and offset. And my distance, I'm going to guess at a distance. I want it to be about that big. And so we'll offset on that side. We'll offset on this side. And this are going to be cuts. And hold on, I'll change object layer. Those are going to be cuts. Because the tab exists here, I don't need the tab on this edge anymore. So this line is going to be a cut line. Okay. At the top here, I could choose to put a tab there, or I could choose to put a tab here. The way that these nest together, it's going to be better to have the tab here when you actually construct it. So I'll do another offset. This will be a cut, like that. Now I'll go ahead and I'll draw a few more lines here, and we'll make all of those a cut. And I'll probably need to extend that line so that it meets right there. And I could do one more right there. Okay? So in reality, sometimes you have to do a little bit of a modification as they come to a point. Maybe it's better, instead of going straight, to do a line. Let me snap to nearest here that kind of goes at an angle, something like that. I could do the same thing here, like that. It's kind of up to you. You can do the modification in the field, or you could do it after the fact. So let me go ahead and trim those off. Oops, wrong piece. Like that. Now all of these are going to be cuts. All right, so that glues onto there, which means that this piece is going to be a cut. So you can see I'm working my way around the object as I'm starting to create this. So that folds down together. This edge here is going to connect, and sometimes you lose track of what they're going to connect to, so you want to turn your numbers back on. So 2 is going to connect to 2. So I either need a tab here or I need a tab here. It's going to be easier to create the tab over here because I can't really do a tab down in here. So we'll go ahead and turn these off, or actually I could just lock them as a reference. And we'll offset this one out in that direction. This obviously, oops, this needs to be on the cut layer. And I'll come back and I'll touch up the ends there as well. So that's done. 1 is going to line up with 1 here. I don't have room for a tab there, so we'll do the tab here at the end. So let me offset. There. And that will, of course, be on the cut layer as well. Oops. I accidentally did 2 offsets. There we go. So 0 is going to correspond with 0 here, so I can pick one or the other. It doesn't matter which side. We'll go ahead and offset that direction. This will be on the cut layer. But that also means that this one doesn't need to be offset, and it will be on the cut layer. 10 here connects to 10 there. Let's do the cut over on this side. Oops, looks like I'm actually missing. Let me turn this off for just a second. Yep, I'm missing a little piece here. There, there, there. And let me do a quick trim. Oops, that goes away. And explode if I can type. And that needs to be offset 2 T's. And that needs to change onto the cut layer. Change object layer. OK, so that's there, and that's going to correspond to that end. Okay. Now, essentially, I've gotten through. Just make sure. Oh, 8. One of these 2 has to have 1. So we'll do it on this triangle here. We'll do an offset there. And we'll make this one change object layer. There we go. So I've made my way through essentially the shape. Now I can just repeat what's happening on the top on the bottom because the shape is roughly symmetrical. And so we'll go ahead and I'll turn off these so we can have a look. And we'll do a few more offset, and I'll make the cut layer active so I don't have to keep changing layers. We'll offset that. We'll offset that. We'll offset that. That's already done. That's going to be a cut layer. Oops, this is going to be offset there. This and this are going to go onto the cut layer. And those are going to go. Oh, I have to offset the one down at the bottom here. There. This needs to be red. That's going to be red. That's going to be red. As is this. OK, so what I should ultimately end up with is a red line that goes all the way around the outside, with any line that's inside is going to be blue to be folded. So it'll take a little bit of touch-up. I'll have to do a few more of these little angled pieces and ultimately some trims. That one's going to turn out nicely anyway, so it just needs to be trimmed. did. I'll go back and fix it in a second. There. All right, so all of that's good. Let's do a quick trim. So I made a mistake right here on these pieces. They're not quite in the right spot. So let's take them. Move that there. Clearly, I should have paid more attention. All right, let's a couple more little pieces to clean up here. That. And a couple more little bits there. This and this both need to go on the cut layer. And there I am. So I've created this shape such that it could now go straight to the laser cutter and be printed. Thank you. I can't get anything past you guys today. Apparently. Okay, so now it's done, I hope. And I could cut this out on the laser cutter. Okay? So this is essentially the shape, and when it glues together, if you're careful, and it takes a little bit of practice, and part of the reason I brought these in is so that you can see it, if you glue it correctly and you actually line up the pieces, the shape will materialize as you start to glue it together because you have these curves. And as long as those edges line up, you'll get the twisting shape. And if I have time later, I'll try to go throw this in the laser cutter and see if we can actually make one out of it. So sometimes when you've done something like this, it's useful, and let me turn back on the skin, to have a little bit more information come with your unrolled surface. So let me take and turn back on my floors, and I'm just going to do the floors with this so that we don't end up with too much. I'm going to take my floors and my skin, and I'm going to copy them so that we can see it. Okay, so I have the floors and I have the skin. I'm now going to intersect the skin with the floors to create little profile curves that go around at the edges of every floor. I could duplicate the borders of every floor too. It doesn't matter which way I do it. Let me create an extra layer here. Make that active. And I'll do that intersect. And so now we see that it's created all of those little curves. Okay? At that point, we can turn back off the floors, and we have the skin plus these little curves that go around the object. So when I go to do the unroll surface, okay, select surface or polysurface to unroll. I can again select the surface. It also says select curves on polysurface to unroll. So before I didn't have any curves on the surface. I just unrolled the surface and so I went through. But in this case, I have all of these curves. So if I were to select all of those curves during the unroll, right? Explode is set to yes, labels are set to yes. I'll go ahead and hit enter. And it will unroll yet again. And if we look at it in the top view, somewhere, it's on top of my other one. Right? Let me back up 1 second here, and let me move this one out of the way. Yeah, it goes to the origin. And let me do that again. Unroll surface. Surface first. Select curves as well. I'll select the curves, and I'll go ahead and hit enter. And so here they are. Now, we have the surface, but we also have all of the individual little curves that unrolled with it. And so on the surface, you guys are saying, well, wait a minute, why is that important? Okay. Well, remember that I'm going to ultimately be turning off the surfaces. Let's see if I can turn off the surfaces here. All right. So let me make an extra layer, change object layer. So the curves are now on a separate layer. So when I turn off the skin, oops, when I turn this off, all these curves represent each floor of the building. So instead of having just an empty shape with nothing on the sides, right, by unrolling all of these curves, I can have little striations where every floor of the building would be on the outside. So I can choose to engrave all of those pieces to see the floors themselves. Okay? So if I turn this back on, I can actually use these floors over in here. So we can turn off the skin for just a second. Let me turn on extra so I can see. And let's lock extra. And it would probably take a little bit of time to practice and figure out where they are, but 20. I'll leave the skin on. Let me copy these. $20 was right there. So I can put those, and then I can rotate these. And I probably put these in the wrong spot. But I can then put those on the engrave layer. There. And when I turn these off, you can see that all of those floors are now going to show up as part of the engraving of the building. Let me try to move this. I really want not to be off. All right, that should be better. And now when I turn this off, all of those floors are then going to correspond. That looks like my rotation's off, but you guys get the idea. So I can unroll the curves with the surfaces, and therefore I can get each of those floors such that the building looks more like a building. So in an ideal world, we'd have those floors on each of these unrolled as well. It is important not to just go through and do an offset of all of these floors, because you notice if you look at the floors a little bit, as the building warps or turns, those lines aren't quite straight, because they will be straight once you glue it together. So you want to make sure you unroll it with the surface. Okay? So what I'm asking you to do for today's exercise is to get to the point where you have this object. You're going to post this object so that we can see it, and you're going to do that by going to the little triangle here, going to Capture, to File, and you'll save a screenshot, essentially, of this particular image, which you can then upload as part of your process. So the good news is you don't actually have to make it, but I do want you guys to do this. Now, I made a couple mistakes on the handout for today. One is that I said that your assignment 203 is due on 10/28. Obviously, it's not due on 10/28. It's due on whatever, 4/11. No, 4/4. 4/11. Right. Your topo's due on 4/4. This is due on 4/11. So this is due not on Monday, but a week from Monday, because the topo's due on Monday. Sorry. My bad. My bad. My mistake.
This isn't part of 203.
So this is the skill that you're going to need to have to be able to do 203. So as of today, as soon as I stop talking, you theoretically have the skills necessary to do everything in 203. Okay, so I apologize. 4/11 is the due date, and it is next Monday. It's a week from next Monday, right? It's 2 weeks. Sorry, I'm pulling out my calendar just to make sure I'm accurate. Correct. So it's Monday, 4/11. Furthermore, Part 7, Step 7 under Part 2, I say if you did not finish your work for Exercise 217, I meant 216. So if you didn't finish your work from last class, the renderings, you can work on those. In an ideal world, spend your time working on your assignment 203 because you're going to have to get your building done. You're going to have to get your environment in to San Francisco. You're going to have to get your sun in the background and all the rest of it. If you struggle with trees showing up in the skyline or whatever, change your HDRI background image or put yourself lower at more street level and do your rendering looking up, which will hide all of those trees and whatever. We will deal more with how do you hide those trees when we do the final project and the renderings there. So there are ways around it, or there's HDRIs that are better than others to pick. So there's options around it. But for right now, just change your camera angle to miss them. So for 203, you do need to do the unrolled surface and you need to do the rendering. So it's kind of a conglomeration of everything we've been doing. Okay? Next week, in terms of the trajectory of where we're going, I will introduce your final project for the semester. Yeah, I know it's early, but at the same time, you guys will have both class days next week, Monday and Wednesday, to go through and actually build your design in Rhino. And then the following week, we'll start actually doing renderings from that design. So you'll have a lot of time to model what you want to model. The details are really important. I'll show you some strategies for how to go about it. On Wednesday, I'll show you how to integrate your model into the site, and then we'll start talking about renderings. All of that has to happen before we can start doing lighting and night rendering and all that sort of thing. Okay? So that's a little bit about where we're going over the next 2 weeks. Are there any questions? No. Honestly, I don't remember what the scales were. They were long enough ago. I think they probably were. All right?
So on the unrolled, it's explode with labels?
Explode, yes. Labels, yes.